My name is Esteban Salonga. I'm more famous for being the son of Senator Salonga, which I think is really unfair because while I admire my father for his very great record, he's a patriot, a nationalist. He was a good lawyer, a good legislator. I think it's unfair in the sense that I was never really meant to be a politician, but I love politics, don't get me wrong. I indulge in it, but not as a candidate or as a leader. In 1977, my father and I started a farm in Antipolo. I was running it basically. He was busier with politics. But this was martial law era. I put up a farm in Antipolo and started taking care of broiler chickens. I was a contract grower for Universal Rubina and then later for General Milling for about 8-9 years. I excelled at that. I was voted Farmer of the Year once or twice for my performance in contract growing. But in 7 or 8 years, I realized that contract growing chickens, the way we were, was really unhealthy for the chickens and ultimately for the consumers. The system...
As early as when?
1978, 79.
You're already aware of that?
Yeah. And I realized that there was something very wrong with it. So in 1983, when Ninoy was assassinated and the dollar went up to almost 50 and the interest rates were running at around 40%, the Jobo bills. That came at a time when, fortunately, I had just harvested chickens. I was resting my poultry houses and it was empty. And I decided I wasn't going to invest in another crop that time because the pharmaceuticals and the agrochemicals needed were sky high because a lot of the components were imported. So tumaas lahat ng inputs. And it was very fortunate. Instead, I put the money in the money market at that time. The interest was very high naman because of the Jobo bill. So, by stroke of luck, I survived like this until 1986 when EDSA came in. Pretty much, by that time I was already a lawyer. I decided to study law while I was farming. Wala rin lang ako ginagawa sa farm. Sabi ko, alangan na, mukhang mababato na lang ako dito. So, I decided to go to law school. Tama-tama naman, nung dumating ang 86, I had taken my bar. I had passed the bar. So, I won't go back into that anymore. We were still living in the farm, my family and I. But I started lawyering. And I became a lawyer and I retired about 5 years ago. And did a good living there. And returned basically to farming. I found this property. And finally, for me, the satisfaction of retiring and going back into farming is this. That the same ideals that I had as a student were revived now. Except this time, instead of being an advocate in the streets, I'm just going to do it. I'm just going to do what I think everyone should be doing. And let's hope na other young people, my own children or my own grandchildren, maybe one or two, will see the wisdom of it and follow. It's really difficult because there's a conflict in the whole world today. If you look at the recent World Bank documents, the future looks very, very difficult for us because our population is exploding. Most of that population is exploding in Asia, in our area, while the rest, the West, the Occidentals, are actually shrinking. Birth rates are going down. The issue of food security and the issue of water security are the two most important issues globally today being treated by all. Both issues are actually related to one larger environmental issue, which is climate change. Our food security is affected by climate change. Our water security is affected by climate change. With climate change as well, the whole globe has a very insecure agriculture. So for me, what's important now is that we should be able to defend our arable land from the encroachment of developers, plantations, and all of this for the export industry, and be able to harness as much land as we can for feeding our own population first so that our population is secure. Then we worry about exporting, then we worry about being able to do other parts for other countries. But as you can see, our latest economic data, agriculture grew only 0.5% net in the year that passed, 2018, while all other services, exports, all grew at the, well, single digits in some, double digits in others, but everything else is growing except agriculture. So that's been a chronic problem, not just of the Duterte, not just of the Aquino, not just of the Arroyo, but every regime prior to it, it's always been a problem. It was a problem for Mr. Marcos also.
Yes.
And he used his martial law powers to be part of that global movement called the Green Revolution, where Asia was going to be harnessed to feed the West, basically. And so the way I look at things now, I think what we need to do now is to realign our government policy to an economy, an agricultural economy that will sustain a greater number of people than what it is sustaining today. So I guess I'm saying that I think we're wrong to be concentrating our government resources in aiding plantation export agriculture. I don't think we should be worrying too much about export agriculture and earning dollars today, because our service sector as well as our OFWs are in fact the ones actually providing most of that. Our manufacturing sector for export is doing all right. So I think maybe we can begin to rework our priorities for agriculture and not worry so much about rice. I notice when they talk about agriculture, they're always talking about rice, as if people only ate rice and nothing else. The rest of the agricultural sector needs help.
Yeah. Even the fisheries.
And that's the one that really has to grow. In fisheries, for example, they're worried about fisheries when they're actually looking at the problem of the large fishing companies that are supplying the large tuna canning factories. So again, this is an export problem.
So it's
They're not looking at the
paradigm.
right. I'm saying the real problem is the subsistence fisherman. And because he's the one that's actually feeding the community where they are actually fishing. Now you're talking about losing fish here that will go to Gensan, get canned, and then get sent to the United States of America. For me, why is that a problem? Let them get their fish somewhere else. Why should that be our problem? Right? So I'm just saying that the government's program is looking at the wrong people. It's looking at the big capitalists, the investors from abroad, the feeding of the global trade market so that we maintain our standing in the global community, which is all well and good, but it seems to deny the real problem in this country. Context. For the longest period of time, thousands of years, the whole world lived on sustainable subsistence farming. every farmer had a community around him that depended on him for their subsistence. Right? The subsistence farmer first planted to feed himself. And as soon as he could plant more and didn't need any more food, then he began to support his neighbors, and it would grow as he grew. And of course, when a corn farmer plants corn and begins to have more corn than he needs, he begins to save seed, and then he can give it to his neighbors, and his neighbors can start planting the same corn. And soon you have a very large community all growing very good quality corn. It's been going on like that for a long time. And then in the 1700s, the idea of plantation of sugar, these things were happening in South America, in Africa. And so they brought the idea here, and they found large tracts of land, and they started planting sugar. And the idea of plantation for export basically opened up by the Suez Canal, allowed trade now to be brought there. In this whole agricultural industry for export started to take the importance out of subsistence farming, but between the 1700s and the 1900s, it coexisted. There was enough land, there were enough farmers, so that even if they were exporting sugar from Iloilo and Negros, it didn't affect the food system everywhere else. But once sugar had spread to Luzon and taken up land in Pampanga and then in Tarlac, you were hitting the breadbasket of Luzon already. And you were starting to take away acreage, arable land, from subsistence agriculture to an export agriculture. And it's only grown in the 20th century. And now into the 21st century, we're being told that our salvation as a country is in plantations. They're saying land reform should be reversed because it has taken arable land away from good capitalists and efficient businessmen in the private sector who could be making more efficient production for export and earn dollars and feed your economy based on the dollars you earn. Now, this puts the whole subsistence agriculture on its head in the sense that, no, don't plant for yourself. Don't feed yourself. We'll send you food, just send us the dollars. Export. So here, you're supporting a liberal economic order that is built on mutual trade. Mutual trade isn't because they need something from us. It's because they need to sell you something and they have to take something in return that they can then sell to someone else. So this is actually how it works. I'm saying that's all well and good, and I can't deny that after World War II, it was that liberal economic order that basically prospered all of Asia, rehabilitated Europe, and basically created the world economy as we know it today. I'm not denying that. That's good. All I'm saying is, in the process, you've destroyed the real food security of the Philippine Islands. You're teaching us to mine in an archipelago that is just a bunch of islands in the ocean. I can't deny it's okay to be mining in Canada or in the United States or in Tibet, even in Mongolia. Great wastelands full of minerals. But when you have a biodiverse island, archipelago, community that depends on nature for its water and its food, destroying large areas of islands for the sake of what? Some minerals that some foreign country needs for something else. And that has nothing to do with us. I don't see us trading our natural resources on such parity. It just doesn't make sense to me that should be. When Thoreau wrote Walden Pond, when he returned to nature and he was trying to articulate a human sense that we, in fact, do not belong in a factory. We belong in Walden Pond, in an area of great serenity and closeness to nature. And what he's actually telling you is a human yearning to be in harmony with nature, which is a very Eastern, Oriental perspective, and which we all share. I think you know this. Unfortunately, our educational system, our cultural systems, we've been brought up in American Hollywood movies and therefore subject to the same brainwashing as any normal American. And this has given us, the Filipino, a very dual personality. So there's always those two visions. Ako personally, I have to express a sentiment, which is that I feel in my blood that I am Filipino in a very unique way, and that Filipino-ness is very uniquely centered in this environment, in this place. I live here in Tanay not as a pragmatic or deliberate, but rather I feel like I belong here. And that sense of parochial belongingness is important to my identity as a Filipino. But more than that, it translates backwards. It then begins to change my Western values, which I learned in school and in my educational system, and began to adapt again to the rural environment that is here. And I'm grateful to the province of Rizal and Tanay because they've kept their cultural identity intact through all of this. Of course, they go to Manila, they watch movies there, they have the children educated there, but the social mores, the fabric here is intact. And if you stay here long enough and become part of it, then you know you're Filipino. And you know it in a very unique way, not in some advertisement type, commercial type way of expressing the sentiment, but just being who we are and what we do. Let me tell you something. 300 years ago, every Filipino family, whether they lived in Manila, lived in a provincial city, they all had farms in the mountains. Huh? Why? Nung araw, pag dumating yung mga Muslim raiders at meron nang nagkalembang na, eto na yung mga Moro, takbuhan lahat sa bundok. Pag pumunta sa bundok, kahit abutin na ng isang buwan yung mga Moro doon, buhay sila dito dahil may kamote, may mais, may bigas. Buhay sila. And then when the threat was gone, they would all come down. And when the Spaniards came, the same thing. All. So we've always had farms. We've always subsisted on our own efforts. In the old Botong Francisco murals, you will see how prosperous the Philippines really was. In fact, it was so prosperous, we were able to support a Spanish colony here for 300 years that basically fed off our agriculture. And we fed them off the surplus. Hindi naman tayo nagugutom nun. Pero nakakapagpakain tayo ng libo-libo mga Kastila in a level of comfort and luxury that they were used to, of the sweat of our brows. We were good farmers. We always have been productive. And no part of the islands, no matter how much we are just an archipelago in the ocean, we have mountains in the middle of the island, beaches at the bottom of the island. You ask, where is all the planting getting done? Right? Well, basically in the mountains. We understood agriculture in the mountains. Go to Banawe, go to Sagada. You'll see the rice terraces. That's how we subsisted prior to the Muslims, prior to the Spaniards, prior to the Americans, prior to the Japanese. I think what we're really talking about is the future. And while a lot of people like to frame the future in terms of the present, that means looking at present developments and then trying to telescope it into the future. I'm afraid change isn't quite like that. A lot of the stuff that's here in the present will not be here soon. The oil industry won't be around much longer. I think the national grid, where electricity is distributed by one authority, will not be around long. Factory employment won't be around much longer. And for those who understand the way technology is changing the world, employment isn't going to be what it is today. Two industries are going to be impacted almost directly. One is the call center, where you answer customer requests. Artificial intelligence has collated all this data from all the call centers in the world, and they've got it down to a database where the most common questions can be answered by a machine. Okay? So the Philippine call center industry is moving into what we call back office outsourcing, office outsourcing, where we have Filipino accountants, Filipino actually doing work, transcribers, actually doing work for companies abroad through the internet. Now this is active employment, part of the knowledge economy, but no longer mechanical. At some point in time, even that will become mechanical. And artificial intelligence will be able to distinguish enough of the nuances of the differences to actually make decisions that humans can make. So a lot of the employment opportunities we're looking at today aren't going to be there. The question for your children and your grandchildren is, what are they going to be doing? They obviously aren't going to be doing what I did the last 40 years. Yeah. So obviously, you have to prepare them. How can you prepare for them? Some people will just accumulate money, put it in the bank, and hope that the money will be there when their children need it. Yeah. Assuming, of course, we don't have a global financial cataclysm that makes all money valueless.
Still fiat
Because if we're not doing fiat money, then all your effort is gone.
Yeah.
Because that's all you accumulated, fiat money. So what I'm saying is, you have to begin to look at the future in a very different light. So climate change, water crisis, food crisis. These are the three crises, I call them the three horsemen of the apocalypse, that we should be looking out for, because they're the ones that climate change is going to affect most seriously. The oil industry is dying because our planet is dying, and the necessity for reducing hydrocarbon is no longer a choice, but an inevitable transformation. Because of that, hopefully, the atmosphere won't kill agriculture. Because if the atmosphere kills agriculture, we're all dead anyway. And I guess your next option is to call up Elon Musk and try to get a seat to Mars so you can move somewhere else. So I'm saying, if you really wanted to prepare your children, first, you have to make them see the future, even a glimpse of it. Just the way I showed it to you. And you yourself, in your own context, in your own situation, you have to make a decision how you're going to address that problem. I've addressed my problem my way, which is basically to go back to agriculture, go back to an agriculture that's not necessarily organic, but sustainable. Yeah. Sustainable in the sense that the less you need outside inputs to produce your food, then the more sustainable you become.
Without killing the soil. Yeah.
Second, that your agriculture is inclusive in that it benefits the community in which you are operating in. That means whatever you're doing, whatever you're planting, it's for the community. It's not for some distant beneficiary in some foreign country who doesn't actually need it. So basically become part of the community that you live in, so that you have a support system, you have a network below, under you, so that when things go bad, you have neighbors that you can go to. And when they get into problems, you're there, you're able to help them, and you become part of a social fabric that supports the whole community. All I'm actually saying is to try and return to some very basic community values that Filipinos have always treasured, but was lost in urban living, or living in the urban culture, or living in a Western economy. All of these things may have been destroyed for you, But I want you to know that they can be restored anytime you go home. And the more often you go home to your farm, your community, or your hometown, the sooner that you will feel yourself able to. I think our biggest obstacle for what I'm trying to do and what we're all trying to do, which is to restore a sense of independence in our food production. Remember this, for a long, 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 long time, Filipinos always thought planting was fun. Okay? Because it was the time when we were planting that the whole community came together, and you know, the little children would play and the women would cook and the men would be out planting and helping each other finish their own plots and their own fields. And then in the waiting season between that, there would always be religious fiestas, and then by the time harvest came, it was time to share the bounty of our and have even grander fiestas and feeding each other and helping each other. Sometime, I think in the 1900s, somebody taught a Filipino child a song called "Planting Rice is Never Fun." And everything changed after that. So if today you tell your children, "Wag ka magiging farmer, kawawa ka naman. Don't you know, planting rice is never fun." So if you thought there was something wrong with our mindset, I say that probably is the reason why there's something wrong with our mindset.